Welcome back to the SPL. Finch here. I've got Ryan Agro Bailey joining me, and we just got through with a very convincing win there by Space Station up against LG, so we're going to be moving into the next set. See if Trifecta and Splyce can get some big W's too.
Yeah, convincing is one word for it. Dominance, almost mean, like bordering on mean is probably what I would go with.
Ryan Thesaurus Bailey, maybe.
No.
Because you just gave us some other words for...
I did. That doesn't mean that I am a thesaurus.
No, I mean you're not unaggro either. It's a descriptor.
Sometimes I am.
you can't be unaggro. Someone. What's the next thing?
I'll show you after this desk segment. Trifecta versus Splyce. Look, this is a great match, I think, for us to see exactly how the entire scope of North America is going to shape out through the summer split, because Splyce is looking much, much better, in large part due to them being in this team house, playing together, being on the East Coast in the case of CycloneSpin, Divios, and Cyno. But at the same time, Trifecta with these roster changes, how is that going to impact them? How are they going to switch around? And will they be better? Will they be worse? Will they be about the same? This is a good measuring stick for both of these teams.
And Trifecta really have just looked better, haven't they, since they made this some changes over? They moved Metyankey over to the Hunter role. They got Paul now in the mid lane for them, and we kind of can't sing the praises here of Paul enough. Now, it's not a huge sample size, but I mean, I'll be honest. Personally, I thought this was a win-fall split move that Trifecta made, but they look like they have a chance to be big contenders here in summer.
Without a doubt they do, and because Metyankey, I think, it just has that potential to be a great ADC in this league once again. He certainly was at one point. I think that he can definitely return to that form. Paul looks like he can play with the best in the SPL. I mean, this is a solo kill onto Whirlwind, who has been around in the SPL for a long, long time. So you know that Paul has that sort of potential. It's just a matter of, will he keep it going? First of all, you get, when you first come into the league, often you get that big boost of confidence. You can beat up on everyone. Everyone hits that sophomore slump. I think that Keegs is going through that a little bit right now for Luminosity, where Keegs came in, looked dominant. Teams are adjusting to his play style, learning a little bit more about him and his god pool, and they'll start to punish him. Ride this wave for Paul while you can, because eventually teams will adjust, and then he's going to have to adjust after that.
But Trifecta have they've played around Paul as a unit, it feels like. Play around Paul might be too generous, but they're playing very aggressive just as a team. Yes. And that very much fits Paul's playstyle, right? I was worried Paul was going to come in and try and be like every other mid laner, but that is not the play. They picked up Paul to be Paul.
And that works beautifully with Mask. He's the heart and soul of this Trifecta team. Mask has been so good here in Season 5, and I don't think he's getting enough credit for his level of play in the jungle for Trifecta, and that aggressiveness really does originate from Mask, who is an inherently aggressive player in his own right. His picks like to be aggressive. The way that he calls the game and wants to be around the map is usually very, very aggressive. And Trifecta as a whole has really benefited from that. Scary D has looked great in the solo lane because Mask is often putting pressure all across the map, and it opens up the lanes for Scary D to make an impact.
And that's going to be an important matchup for him. Talking about Paul, talking about Mask going into the Splyce matchup, that's going to be who their opponents are in this match, who are towards the bottom, like we said, in Spring Split. So they have a lot of growth to show here, and this is the matchup where they show it. That's why we were saying this is so important, because these were kind of two, well, not the two, LG was the fifth place team, but Trifecta and Splyce, they should be a little bit more even than maybe like Splyce going up against Space Station or United. So this is a good chance to see how much Splyce has been able to develop.
Exactly, and Splyce was just giving these great games to teams of Trifecta's caliber, of even United and Space Station's caliber in the Spring Split, but they could just never find the set victories. They were constantly winning games. Went to Game 3 in almost every single set during the Spring Split, and just couldn't quite find that Game 3 victory ever. They didn't win a Game 3 all Spring Split long. They're 1-0 thus far, and they won that set in 2 games. So if this one goes 3, then this is their chance to break that Game 3 curse, but they'd probably like to try and just get it done in 2 again.
No, I imagine that they'd be feeling much better if they could. And we know that Splyce are very capable of it. They have very strong players on this team. We see it all the time when we don't see Splyce do quite as well as we expect, right? Because, I mean, they have the likes of Divios and Aror on this team, and Cyclone. These are huge players, huge names, and they haven't been able to coalesce yet. So that's why them playing together, it feels like is that big surge that they need as we're just about ready to move here into picks and bans.
Without a doubt. I mean, we talk about it with LAN teams. What's the difference between playing at LAN here at the studio and playing all together in a house? You're more comfortable at the house, so it's even better for you most of the time. This is a huge boost for these Splyce guys to come together and work better as a unit, as well as just understand each other at a personal level a little bit better.
And I think these are a lot of emotional players too, that I think that'd be fair to say, right? People who are very kind of play emotionally, like, or, you know,
Yes.
Aror is an emotional guy. So I'd say the same about Divios too. I mean, when these players are together and they're feeling good, I gotta think that's gonna show up in their gameplay, and this is a chance for them to show it. Picks and bans here between Splyce and Trifecta are already underway. Hercules taken away. I get that. Scary D looks pretty good on it.
But so does Divios at the same time.
That's
so
fair.
I guess Splyce take it away from themselves. It's more just a throwaway ban that a god that they don't really want to deal with, but aren't that worried about getting for themselves. We see this a lot in the first pick slot.
Sure.
This leaves open gods like Giannis, like Guan Yu, and that's going to be the selection for Splyce. Guan Yu. It doesn't surprise me because this is a flex pick.
Yes.
I think to 3 different roles now for Splyce, because Cyno's played a lot of warriors in the jungle so far in Season 5, mostly Erlang, but you know this, he could definitely go for it. Aurora would love to play something that's aggressive in the duo lane, and Divios can play anything under the sun.
Well, they pick up the Ganesha, do Trifecta in response to that pick, as Guan Yu is going to be pretty strong for Splyce. Ganesha can, you know, silence out the Talu Assault, so that is one good thing he has about this matchup. But Guan Yu does so many good things. It kind of feels like Talu Assault like 3rd or 4th on the list of things that Guan Yu does well, so that won't hurt him too bad.
No, not too badly, and honestly, you can just move him away from that counter matchup by putting him solo now.
Sure.
If you really need to. There's where that going with it early gives you the flexibility that the enemy team has to account for. In an early Erlang Shen pick alongside Agni, these are 2 gods that Splyce has played an awful lot of so far. The thing about Splyce is they are either very, very predictable, and you know exactly what they're going to pick, or you have no clue.
Well, that's because when they did this the first time, you were like, whoa!
Right.
And now they're doing it like for the 12th time, and you're like, yeah, Cyno plays a lot of Erlang.
Exactly, and I love this response to the Odin right away. It's great against all 3 of these gods, and this is Trifecta understanding that Splyce can be predictable at times, and if they aren't going to go into the really deep into the bag of tricks, they're going to stay with what has worked for them and been comfortable for them thus far. This Odin selection, I think, is right on point.
And they already have picked up that Raijin as well for Paul, which we've seen him play well on already here in the SPL. I like this. If they're not going to ban something out, give Paul something he's already seen some success with. Try and guarantee some comfort and some confidence for him going into this match. Not that I think Paul is someone who's short on confidence, but anything to help make sure I think is strong, and that's what Trifecta have done by securing this mid lane pick for him.
Well, if they're looking for Odin in response to the Guan Yu and likely an Erlang Shen, Raijin is one of the best picks against it, right? Because he can get out of that Odin cage very easily. So I think Trifecta factored that in and kind of got a step ahead.
Sure.
And it doesn't hurt that Paul's very comfortable on it, to be sure.
Ullr going to be the next pick for Trifecta, very likely going over to the Hunter role for this squad. Bit of a lane bully, but doesn't always translate into the team fighting phase as well, so we'll keep our eyes on that one as Neith is locked in for Splyce. So, as we said, they do manage to still keep you guessing some.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, Splyce has gone for these late game Hunters basically all split long if they're actually playing Hunters. A lot of it has been Warriors for CycloneSpin, but he's gotten back to the actual Hunter train, and it's been the ROMs, the X-Ball before X-Ball was buffed, and now instead the Neith, something that can get out of that Odin cage. On her came to mind, Hu Yi came to mind. Cyclone has had a great Hu Yi game not long ago, and I feel like that's a slightly better matchup against the Ullr than Neith is. I'm surprised that isn't Hu Yi.
Kumbhakarna is going to round out this draft here for Splyce, along with the Nemesis for Trifecta. And I actually really like Nemesis. I mean, imagine to pick this 10th overall for a while. Nemesis was like the jungler to have. She's kind of had some touches, so I fell a little bit out of favor, but certainly still strong. I mean, especially if Mass can get off to a big start on this Nemesis, that's tough to deal with, and we know how much he likes to play this god.
But it's great against the Erlang Shen as well. You can use that ultimate to strip away his warrior-style protections and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. But he does have a lot of CC that can cancel out that Retribution shield. There's lots of CC in general on Splyce's side, so that does worry me a little bit. Also, Trifecta doesn't have that great a follow-up to this Odin cage. You're basically relying entirely on Paul to get the damage done once someone's locked in the cage.
Hey, relying on Paul to do damage ain't too bad, but we're just about ready to move here into the game, Ryan. I got to ask you, between these two pretty close teams, you leaning more towards Splyce or Trifecta?
I think this Odin pick was just a little bit too good. I'm going Trifecta.
All right, well, let's see if Trifecta can pull it out. Playing through that Odin, we'll go ahead and get it over to the casters.
Thanks so much, Desk Analyst. Me and Tolly will be bringing you this game today. Erlang Shen Guan very aggressive frontline composition here. It's a lot of push them back and go aggressive and allow Agni to rain bombs down with a Neith.
That's true. The Neith is going to help the early pressure from this Erlang Shen jungle that Cyno really likes to do, and I'm expecting this Guan Yu Erlang Shen combination to start working together. Something that CycloneSpin doesn't really prefer is the Neith, but you know what? They've been practicing so much together behind the scenes that who knows what works for them and what doesn't.
Hey, I think the decision with Neith coming forward now is the fact that the buffs have helped her out quite a bit. Who do you guys at home think will win? Aggro on the desk was signing toward Trifecta with the Odin, but then again, we saw LG pick an Odin and it didn't work out either.
That's true. Kiki couldn't really make it happen in that last set. We'll see if this is the game for Trifecta to step it up and continue their lead a little bit. They found their victory earlier against CLG, I believe, where Splyce was the ones to take out LG.
Well, into game we go. Break this one down as we get in here and see exactly where everyone's playing. I was interested to see whether it would be Kumba or Guan Yu potentially for Divios, but hello. What's going on in that duo lane?
NeiruMah with the Metyankey. Yeah, I was about to say.
Okay, we got an interesting one now then.
It's going to be doing a lot of damage to the lane, and that's what you're looking to do is clear the lane as soon as possible. Neith, very effective at clearing the wave when she gets level 2, level 3. You don't always want to backflip to set up the pop of that broken weave to get that off, the damage off, but sometimes you want to make sure you have that also for the escape, whereas NeiruMah and Metyankey, they don't have to use their escapes to clear the wave. You use that Turn of Fate on the Ganesha to amplify the damage out of Metyankey's Percussive Storm, and level 1 play should favor Trifecta.
Well, at the same time as well, Tolly, obviously the Trifecta team, well, Splyce have the advantage of when they load into the game, they get to see Metyankey's playing Raijin, so they knew this was probably going to be in the duo lane here unless Metyankey went to mid and pull to the duo side of things. Start of this game, Speed before he's taken down by Cyno, and he goes straight to the right-hand Harpies here. Meanwhile, Trifecta will steal away purple as Splyce just going to take their own red buff and fall back to lane 2.
They did miss 2 melee minions as a result of invading that purple buff, but able to strip away the purple out of Splyce is not a bad look if you're going to get your own, but outside of the Raijin in the dual lane, it's also the fact that the Ullr in middle heavily outboxes Agni.
On Splyce now starting to heavily gain favor in terms of fans. They're up in the standings in terms of how well they've been playing this split so far. And the fans at home have recognized that. They have a feeling Splyce could do pretty well here. Not as well as Trifecta mind, but fans are still growing there. This lane is going to be very interesting then to see how Metyankey works out against the Neith.
I mean, how can the fans at home hate Aror or Divios and TheBest?
Easily.
They're just silly little goofballs.
You've never seen them at LAN when they're silly little goofballs and you're trying to work seriously and commentate on them, and then they're cosplaying, playing Bologna. Well, role-playing, playing Bologna, not cosplaying. If they cosplay, that'd be more entertaining.
I'd rather hear Divios scream rally here than some of the other things that the players are screaming.
That is also true indeed for the most part. Pressure then in the duo lane for Splyce for the time being. It just seems that Raijin and Ganesha going to sit back for now. Scaredy on the Odin. Going to need some help against Divios as this one goes on, and you can already see that Mask is making a rotation around the back early on. Put some pressure onto Divios, who has TP, so doesn't have any sort of escape or slow immunity here.
Oh, the dash was probably used by Divios. He can't get out of this one until the very last second. He probably, the way you work Guan Yu in the laning phase is sometimes you want to dash through your opponent, get the minion aggro, then Talo assault the whole wave, but you got to be mindful about the jungle pressure.
Biggest thing that changed with Guan Yu to see him rise to competitive play wasn't just the passive that got a bit of a buff where he doesn't get consumed by using your abilities, but it was also to do with his attack chain. It's allowed him to clear the wave a little bit more effectively, Tolly, and not just be dependent on his Talo assault.
The third swing, giving that AoE cleave attack, helps him a little bit, and any little bit at the SPL will go a long way. That can turn a losing matchup against an Odin that can apply 100% anti-healing into a winning one because you'll just outclear him.
And early on, you can see a bit of an advantage so far for Divios in that lane as blue buff just dropped for both those solo laners. Cyclone will get his own red buff once again, working towards that level 5. And I think once we see Cyclone hit that level 5 on Neith, Tolly, it's go time for Splyce to try and make an impact with that World Weaver.
It's more important to maybe help out Divios defensively if there's going to be ganks in that solo lane. That we saw a little preview of that of Mask trying to assist Scary D against Divios. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe
maybe Splyce, instead of helping out Cyno, they just help out Divios instead.
Good beads better for the mid lane of the two, though, onto Paul. I mean, Ullr, doesn't have a CC immune ultimate playing that. And with that, with Agni and an Erlang Shen, you burn the beads once, and then it could be go time the next time round.
There'll be about a 70-second window differential between that Neith World Weaver and the defensive relic out of Paul, so that wouldn't be a bad idea either. And that's what Splyce has. They have options of where they want to go.
Well, Metyankey getting a bit of poke there out from CycloneSpin. And this lane is going kind of interesting. Metyankey back to the Hunter role, but playing a mage here. Versatility is definitely the option in this one.
Isn't this what Metyankey did with Snoopy before, when they were like kind of swapping lanes before back in the day? Metyankey still playing mages in that dual lane, and Snoopy was playing hunters, but not much has changed.
Well, Divios traps inside the ring, and Mask is coming in to gank. Horsey is up, Horsey is out by the looks of this. No, he juked back towards the center. Minions involved, Sustaino keep him topped up for now. The pin from Cyno. He may get a turnaround kill on Mask if he can just find 1 or 2 more attacks, but not in range.
The slow a little bit too strong out of Mask. Can't chase down that one. And really unfortunate situation for Divios. He couldn't really go back down south. Best playing with fire a little bit, as Paul has a lot of damage on the Ullr. Very unfortunate that CycloneSpin just now hitting level 5. That play from Trifecta needed to be perfectly timed.
I like seeing Paul go aggressive in that lane, though, Tolly. It's something that he was doing in the minor league consistently. Unafraid of playing against anybody who comes up against, is what some of the other analysts were saying. And doing that against Best, on an Agni, you've got to have some cojones on you and, keep that pace going, especially when these beads were already down.
I mean, Paul always plays aggressive since its inception. Doesn't matter if he was playing dual lane, Freya, Habwa, whatever the case was, into transitioning now into the mid lane Splyce. Switching things up. They're not actually looking for an invade because there's nothing to invade, waiting on that purple buff. So might as well charge the World Weaver at an angle that's not going to get intercepted.
Round 2, Divios once again trapped in the ring. Cavalry charge not available this time, and he's trying to buy time as much as possible and dashes away at the right time. Jukes out the lunge and the damage from the Raven Shout, and then jumps on the horse to celebrate his victory of survival.
Just now at the nick of time having the ultimate. Very important for that survival, because 1 death is bad enough, but you add 2 on top of this, you're already 2 levels behind. It's just going to start adding up to the pile. And the difference between this gank and the last one was Divios dashed inside the ring in the first gank attempt because he tried to avoid the slice and dice damage, but still got hit by it, unfortunately.
Well, this time around, he's going to lose a little bit more experience to that tower. Didn't have his teleport available, so lost 3 archers, I believe, to the tower. And now a couple of melees as well. He'll get the experience from the whole way, thankfully, because there was a brute there, which is so important. Mid lane though, Mask under a lot of pressure. Will Weaver's coming in from base, and that could be the end of Mask. No, not enough damage on it to bring him down.
Not quite yet. Not having the physical power for CycloneSpin or the Crusher, opting to go for the Devo Gloves as opposed to the Transcendence, which is a little bit of a common thing in the Hunter role, but I would like to see him have a little more power, but he's thinking more mid to late game focus instead.
Well, Trifecta, the only team to actually really make a change in North America from spring into summer in the grand scheme of things, bringing on Paul, replacing Zapman with him, and then having Paul go to mid, so Yankee will end up in that Hunter role we've seen before. They do want to make waves then, Trifecta, but when you make changes, Tolly, it takes a little ramp-up time to get going.
That's true. The fact that it happened at the beginning of the season, not a bad idea to do it now rather than later. Scary D steals away the back camps and gets away safely. Did have to use the ultimate, but it's such a short cooldown that it's actually worth it.
It's good pressure from Scary D. Obviously, Mask has given him the lead in this lane, Tolly, and now he's trying to put the pressure onto the rest of the map. Put the jungler behind a little bit, even pressure on towards the mid lane. This is what you need to do. And talking about that, Mask is back again. But Divios has ward coverage this time. He knows that Mask could be lurking on this Nemesis once more.
He's just kind of baiting out Scary D and wasting the time out of Mask at the same time. Divios is not interested in looking for any sort of boxing exchanges any longer. He needs to play catch-up the whole time. Doesn't even have full mobility, doesn't have Breastplate of Valor completed. He's going to be playing on the back foot for at least another 3 minutes.
Yeah, the timings of his bases, Totally, because he was forced back a couple of times, either through death or just being forced back, means that he wasn't able to complete either of these items, so just investing in the tier 2s.
Every time you have to back, not on your own terms, that's technically half a kill with all the experience and the gold loss, and that's added up, unfortunately, for the Guan Yu solo.
Transcendence is fully stacked, well, nearly enough for Paul in the mid lane, which means he'll have that cooldown reduction in tow, and this is where one of the spikes come through for Paul now on this Ullr. Obviously, he'd like a crusher soon afterwards, but he can start swinging here, Tully.
That's true. You get the cooldown reduction as soon as you purchase the item. You don't need the stacks, but getting that extra 22 to 23 power once you complete all those stacks just adds up to the basic attacks, where a lot of these gods don't have the protections or the health to make that 23 extra power meaningful.
Left-hand side, you can see Cyno was lurking around towards Metyankey on that Raijin, but wasn't able to find anything. But Trifecta, meanwhile, looking to poke the nose around the red buff, see if it was available, but it was already taken down, given to CycloneSpin earlier on. 9 minutes in, and it's basically been Trifecta choosing where they wanted to fight, really.
It's Mask's Nemesis. Last pick Nemesis in a world where at the beginning of Season 5, it was highly contested. Now, almost forgotten about, had to dig it out of the grave, was Trifecta's jungler.
Is there any god that's not been relevant in the SPL at some point? Maybe Arposh. Is that about it? I think every god in Smite has been relevant at some point or another.
Yeah, I would definitely say so, for
As
sure.
in, like, meta pick, you know?
Yeah, Arposh definitely wasn't a meta pick, but there's a different style.
Splyce picked.
It definitely is a spot. Like, Deathwalker was playing it.
But I don't class that as a meta pick. You know? Whereas, when we're talking a little bit about what you said about the Nemesis here, like, it's been in and out of meta before. Jean-Quiy's been there.
Yes.
Arachne's been there. Like, I don't think... I think it's only Arposh that has it.
It definitely feels that way, at the very least, but...
There might be another one. The fans at home will probably be tweeting at us right now going, hey, you forgot about this one. But
nah, every god has definitely been in the meta. Even Arposh, a little bit of playtime here and there. Paul trying to steal away those left side mid harpies.
And that's the thing about, you know, playing professionally, is that you've got to be able to understand every single one of these gods. It's not like we only have half the gods getting played throughout a year. Generally, you'll see pretty much every god get a bit of a time in the sun. Some more than others, though, granted, because they just work better in the season and how the meta is dictated.
I mean, with over 90 gods currently in the game, nearing that 100 marker, it's a little surprising that there's only one potential god that hasn't seen that much playtime compared to others.
Pretty good. Drums of War out from Metyankey, looking towards CycloneSpin. He does not have beads, had Aegis, but held the Aegis through the whole duration. Ends up going down. Actually, tell a lie, he used it towards the end there, but it wasn't enough to save him. Now, though, Aror's under pressure, but uses his ult nicely timed, otherwise NeiruMah would have found that knock-up. Meanwhile, Splyce trying to answer back in mid lane onto Paul, but Paul will survive.
He uses the beads to get away from the aggression as Cyno infested that ultimate. Aror doesn't have his epic uppercut. He tries to root out Metyankey, but now he's in a 1v3 position, just trying to waste the time out of Trifecta to save his tier 1 tower.
Meanwhile, Splyce is just trying to make something happen in response. The Will Weaver could secure that. If he can keep running, he might get his shout back up.
Nope.
Not this time. Cyclone on the board, but tier 1 for Trifecta.
500 gold for the life out of Scary D. Definitely worth it as long as Splyce does not get the Gold Fury immediately after Aror. Without too much health under his department, needs to back to base. No front line really for Splyce to pull the gold quite yet.
Started biding again for Aror here. He was probably one of the first supports in the world to pick it up in professional play. And a few more have started transitioning towards this item now. Did get a buff just recently, Tully.
That's true. The aura going from 10 to 15 and 5.9 is a good look to be able to bring back some of these heavy CC characters. Kumbhakarna was also played in the last set from by Kiki, so cheeky, and that's another good god to have this item on.
Yeah, well, especially Kumbhakarna, because every single ability is a form of CC.
Pretty much.
Well, it's Kumbhakarna, you know, his throwback is the only ability that's not going to do that. Epic Uppercut, I guess, is classed as
the root,
is
the
Epic
mez.
Classed as a CC?
It's a knock-up into...
It's not a knock-up, though, is it, technically?
Is it not a knock-up?
Would you class it? Because you can't pull people off it with a Wheel Exalt.
True.
So it's not a knock-up.
Well, it's not a banish.
No, I mean, technically it is. You banish them out of the fight. Same as Naja, but it's...
Well, everything besides the epic uppercut.
It is a hard CC, I'd say, but at the same time, is it a hard CC? I'm going to have to test that.
Well, either way, besides the epic uppercut, the rest of his kit definitely applies some form of CC, whether it's the slow, the root, the mez, to at least proc that Stone of Binding.
Could be a bit of a plan in mid here, because Cyno's got his blink up in 3 seconds' time, and I think that's what they're looking to play here, Splyce. Trying to make them step up to the wave, maybe, have Aror just around the corner for support. But it's not to be. Instead, Aror will soak a couple of creeps through the side of the map. If he's lucky, left-hand Harpy's due to spawn. And look at that ward coverage. My, oh my. All left Splyce, all right Trifecta.
They're trying to figure out what they want to do on the left side as Aror is just hiding around the corner. There is a red ward inside the Gold Fury pit. Cyno goes in, blinks onto two, but it's a bait because Scary D is here with a cage.
Beautiful silence out of NeiruMah there that just stops Cyno from doing absolutely anything in that engagement. And that turns it around because Best is almost dead. And I tell you what, if Paul had that crusher, he would have fallen down. Paul was
he's
sneaking
looking.
in.
He's looking for the hail of arrows, forcing Best to cancel out the back. Metyankey feeling some kind of way because he has Mask right beside him.
Will keep him alive for a second, but Mask will just double dash him down. 4-1 in favor of Trifecta now. And all the carries, well, every character on the team at Trifecta have all got themselves a kill each.
Trifecta are very calculating about how they approach these situations. They recognize that Splyce was looking for something cheeky in that mid lane, so they pull over Scary D to counteract that. Beautiful blinking gauge, really trapping Cyno that had that heal coming up, but the cage preventing that, so no life for the jungler Erlang Shen.
Yeah, credit where it's due to NeiruMah, though. That silence was on point. He immediately blinked, and as soon as Cyno got there, he couldn't do a single thing. Silences shut down so many things. That's why everyone hates Nox, you know?
That's true.
It's fair.
It's not just the silence, but also keeping you inside that silence pool. Very frustrating to deal with. Surprised we haven't seen more Nox play, honestly. A lot of mid diversity in Season 5.
There really is at the moment. And with that, Splyce are behind quite a bit of gold at the moment. Roughly about 2,000 as it stands in favor of Trifecta. And it's also 2,500 experience. They're just doing a better job of running this early game, Tolly.
Getting the Tier 1 tower in the dual lane certainly helped their cause, and getting that advantage in the solo lane over Divios, where it's important to try to shut him down with the Guan Yu having such success in the mid to late game.
This, though, Odin's already made the rotation over from solo. Guan in base will have to teleport to a tier 1 soon, but Goldfury's getting very low, and Aror was off the mark with that yawn. But Goldfury's been reset at the same time. The flames of damage from Best was solid, and he'll dash back towards Divios, but he's dead as Mask running down.
Divios trying to get him, but it's going to be Cyclone's ultimate to secure it instead. In the backline, it's Cyno knocking up 2. Collapse, though, onto the Erlang Shen. Will secure it as Paul, but Metyankey answered back by Aror.
Aror's sleeping, NeiruMah's dead. Divios now against 2. Gets support from CycloneSpin. Cyclone already used his ultimate already, and Scary D tries to just pull a bit of a wave out of Paul.
The stun is good, but Paul needs to disengage because CycloneSpin is very healthy. Off the mark with CycloneSpin with the root. So that became a 3 for 3 for nothing. Trifecta feeling frisky, pulling the Goldfury, baited out Splyce perfectly by baiting Auror's ultimate. He actually missed. Everybody just split like the Red Sea, and the best bombs wasn't able to really do much in that team fight.
Notice as well, we saw Cyclone just pull that Goldfury quickly to it. He went for Devour's Gauntlets here on the Neith. Now, normally with a Neith, what do we always see?
Transcendence, Crusher, the pen items, trying to get the power. He's thinking about persevering in some of these team fights and keeping himself alive against the backline penetration against Scary D and Mask. Now, you're not going to get the healing inside the Odin cage, but you can easily backflip away from it. If you get a Poison Star on top of it, you're going to be able to mitigate some of the movement speed out of Mask. And look what else he's doing. Picking up the Relic Phantom just to make sure that there's one, because so far, there's no other Phantoms.
In fairness, Tolly, if you look at the hard CC that Trifecta really have, you're kind of relying on a lot of just raw damage more than anything else. I mean, it's Metyankey's ultimate, Paul's axe, and NeiruMah's silence and slow. That's all the real hard CC they have.
That's true. So you might not necessarily need the beads. That's why CycloneSpin picks up the Phantom. He's going to sit next to the best so far back in the team fights that even if Cyclone gets caught, he'll be fine. He can backflip away from that. But if Best gets caught, that's when the Phantom needs to get applied.
Is it also to allow Aror maybe to go for a blink option here? Is that could be the call too?
That could be the case. They might want to look for some aggressive plays. If Aror doesn't get the blink and only Cyno does, then it's what, like a taunt into a knockup. We saw how NeiruMah was able to disrupt that the last time. There needs to be some other form of engagement and allow Cyno to clean up.
So they both blink at the same time in 2 different directions, and poor NeiruMah can only really deal with one of them.
That's true, unless he just like quickly 360s.
Well, Trifecta go back towards the Goldfury again. Last time this engagement was a 3 for 3. Let's see what happens here, because the goal got relatively low last time and got reset. Aror goes for a yawn, but gets silenced out. Still has his yawn available, but has to throw back to safety, where Divios will top his health bar up.
Still not baiting any ultimates or relics. Very patient until Cyno blinks in, taunts up, but here comes Metyankey banking the drums.
Oh, Cyno's in trouble and he needs to get out of that ring to get his heal off. He will get away to safety, but Metyankey took out Divios in that. No more sustain available. Splyce on the run here. Mask and Trifecta find a nice pick again on Splyce being the aggressors.
Divios cannot be the one to die in these these team fights. They need to rely on his Guan Yu sustain to make these team fights last longer. Yeah. It's okay if Trifecta get the Gold Fury if Splyce can chase them down. They need to set up a little bit of damage, fall back, heal, re-engage, and reapply the burst damage.
I think at the moment, Toli, we were mentioning the aggression from Splyce, the engagement from Splyce is very predictable. It's Cyno blinking in or Divios jumping on a horsey. That's all they really have for this. Maybe Aror can get that blink. We'll see if he does.
I almost would have liked to see Cyno short blink, turtle knock up everybody instead of blink using his ultimate, because after the taunt, he's going to be able to get disrupted by who knows what. There's so many different options for Trifecta to find it. Paul has that axe to be able to prevent the turtle knockup. The silence from NeiruMah is a good look. Now, Metyankey probably not going to use the Thunder Crash to mez the turtle shell, but if no one else from Splyce is next to him, then Cyno's a dead duck.
Well, speaking of Paul in the mid lane, top of the player damage right now, way ahead of the closest opposition, which is an Agni. I expect that will turn around as the game goes on, though. Agni's bombs being, well, basically low cooldown because you get 3 of them technically, and on top of that, one of the only abilities that costs 0 mana.
As long as Splyce doesn't continue to lose their front line, then yes, Best should be able to get off plenty of damage. Splyce needs this game to last very long to get to that late game form between not just Divios, but also the Best. And maybe getting this tier 1 tower could be the beginning of it.
Metyankey used his beads against that World Weaver that just got fired at him then. I guess he had a feeling that Cyno was hanging around, which he is. Cyno has the blink available, has his ult up too, so no beads available for Metyankey to escape. The engagement, but they all focus on the tier 1 tower here. NeiruMah turns up, but a little bit too late to stop the tower
there's
going down.
The blink from Cyno, trying to make it happen onto Metyankey, who doesn't have much mana whatsoever. The knockup is good.
Problem was, Metyankey was out of mana through that whole engagement, so I'm not sure what they were trying to do here. Dual lane for Trifecta, make some mistakes trying to defend the tier 1. And now Splyce have a couple of minions to start poking away at the tier 2.
If Metyankey still had his ultimate, instead of trying to be a little bit too fancy and spicy, maybe they hold on to their tier 1 tower and find those 2 kills.
I got the use of the ultimate to try and defend against the minion wave, right? But the re-aggression when A, the tower goes down, and B, you're out of mana, you're not going to get killed.
At that point, you got to disengage. Yeah. NeiruMah, I'm not sure what his relic situation was, but the sprint still available for him. If that was up, that needed to be used to help out his hunter.
Divios struggling with all the slows in the world, but he's trying to hang on to his cavalry charge for as long as possible. The moment he uses it, you can see that's the game plan. Scary D jumps on the mount. But a very quick Phantom out from Aror, so 2 Phantoms now for Splyce into an uppercut, and it could be turnaround on poor old Paul. He had bigs and ages, but he had no chance to use them.
That's true. I mean, he could have used it against the Yawn if he really wanted to, but he didn't think that he was about to receive all that incoming damage. Splyce are starting to get back in this game.
Hang on a second, they're going for the Fire Giant. Paul's dead. Scary D's doing his blue. Aror's zoning the rest of the team.
This is it. They're going to look for it.
Get in here quick, and he's not going to be in time.
Wow.
Splyce taking FG.
Sneaky, sneaky Splyce. And wow, just the performance out of them to be able to not let the beginning of this game get their mindset in a negative manner. They still group up where it matters around that dual lane. They're like, oh, wait, Metyankey's ult's down. Let's just get this tier 1 tower real fast, because Splyce was about to back off.
They were.
Until they saw that ultimate being used. Like, oh, okay, so now we don't have to worry about this ultimate. Finding the pick onto Paul again. It's like, oh, he's not using his beads. Auror's like, okay, let me just ulti you. And even if he doesn't die, Paul being out of the team fight allows Splyce the aggression that they need for at least the Pyromancer. And they're like, oh, let's just try to go for the Fire Giant to see how Trifecta respond. And there is no response.
The funny thing is, Divios is doing a very good job now of doing the kind of what I see as the classic support syndrome of early game, you get abused as a support because you're low level and you don't have items online yet. But Trifecta haven't changed the transition away from trying to focus the Guan Yu. They're still investing things into him. But he's so hard to bring down, totally. By the time they've invested all that, if he doesn't die, it's definitely going to be a turnaround. That's what happened there.
He baited himself out to get Scary D's to use the ultimate, but trading Scary D's ultimate for Auror's Phantom is a big win for Trifecta, but they did not expect that turnaround damage from Aror. But now, Paul learning his lesson is going to make sure he will beat any form of CC against Aror.
Well, we did mention about the lack of engage for Splyce. It's going to be a forced engage more than anything. Paul going to get shot in the face by a World Weaver. Front line from Trifecta, led in there by Scary D, who's just going to try and soak up some of the damage. And Divios tanking up the tower with that Guan Yu.
The root onto Scary D, the knockup as well from Cyno, less than half health, using the cage defensively from the Dharmic Pillars NeiruMah and Scary D's ultimate is down, not to mention Metyankey that doesn't have that available.
Well, now they're going to go in again for the tier 2 tower, and this will fall down. Trifecta have to fall back as they don't have the ring or any ultimates left available. Divios dives in, cavalry charge online, looks to the backline, and NeiruMah removing the map. Scary D leapt in, but then the dismount came into play. Mask round the back was looking at best.
The bombs raining in onto Metyankey, less than half health. CycloneSpin
That's good
very
damage.
low. The jump being avoided by the backflip. Mask going in, finds one, but he gets knocked up without any beats.
Best did great work there as the pin connects onto Paul, forcing him to leap away back to safety. And the other thing to mention here, Tully, what I do like about having 2 Phantoms on a team, you can juggle them.
Yes.
And as long as both Cyclone and Aror don't use them at the same time, they can juggle them almost consistently around the ring that Scary D is going to bring out, nullifying the pressure from an Odin.
Trying to go when they root Scary D. Not going to use the Phantom quite yet. There's no use to be able to try to look for that kill. Without CycloneSpin available, you're not getting the Phoenix anyway, even if you kill Scary D. I like the patience from Aror.
I actually like this call from Paul too. Splyce are going to do the Gold Fury, but Paul's trying to do a bit of split pushing, look at a tier 2. Bad news is, he pulled Divios over there, so teleport was consumed.
That's true.
Small little win considering Trifecta at a deficit.
There was no minion wave there available quite yet. I think he could have just walked over there if he really wanted to, but better safe than sorry, not giving anything back to Trifecta. And with the Gold Fury, Splyce, who was struggling a little bit at the earlier stages, now with a decent 4,000 gold lead.
Splyce is really coming to play this season. Well, at least this split. I mean, we saw him in spring, and I think a lot of people looked at him and went, some cool names on that team, some pretty decent individual players on this team, but would they function? And in spring, they didn't really function that well. They ended up bottom of the spring split. They were still new together after all. But coming into summer now, all that time in spring spent together and a bit of off-season through the Masters LAN, they're starting to find a bit of momentum here.
They found something, that's for sure, as they're...
Like a house they all play at, maybe.
That helps. That certainly definitely helps build a lot of synergy. And whenever teams and players, like whether it's individual players or a whole cohesive team, you could just definitely tell that there's some sort of change. Even the energy squad finding...
You've done that too, right? Totally.
Yeah,
I mean,
me, Zapman, Lasses, Dare to Care joining in eventually later down the road. It definitely helped build up the chemistry. Being able to communicate in the same room after scrims is bigger than being able to communicate together in the same voice chat.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll see how this works out then for Splyce as the Fire Giant is coming up relatively soon now. First Fire Giant went to Splyce, and that's where the damage has been done a little bit more so by Splyce now, extended to about 5k gold lead. But it's all about trying to cause some issues now for Trifecta is what Splyce is doing, and that's what Aror's up to here, just being a nuisance. Scary D could be in a bit of trouble, actually.
Could be. Cyno looking for the Mink form, going to avoid the Gunrier's might, but not getting much out of the Odin as he holds on to the ult. Trying to go for their second Fire Giant as it's respawned. It will be in the enhanced one, but I don't think Trifecta is going to be looking to give this one up. Still holding on to all their Phoenixes.
Pyro reset for a second. Divios dashes onto Scary D, who eats a lot of damage from an Agni. And Agni's going to take Scary D back to the base momentarily. Blinking from Cyno, looking at Paul, who beads away from the turtle. Can't beads away from the World Weaver, though, if it's already been used. Paul taken out by Cyno. He was split off on the own.
But Divios dashes in. Metyankey using his ultimate, trying to burn Divios, but a beautiful Phantom upgrade to mitigate the damage.
Yeah, reduce the damage is what the big game plan was there. Mask is out. NeiruMah and Metyankey falling back. Scary out to the right-hand side. Splyce find a pick, but they've not got anything else just yet. That's why they're heading back towards the Fire Giant.
Aror, recognizing Divios, went a little bit too ham against Metyankey, so he needed to use that damage reduction Phantom instead of Scary D's ultimate that was still held onto during that whole encounter.
This is a big Fire Giant, I feel, for Splyce if they can get it. And with Scary D just leaping away, that will go to Splyce. There's only a tier 2 tower remaining now for Splyce to take. And it's onto the Phoenixes. With how this game started, I felt Trifecta might run away with it. You saw the pressure we had early on.
It felt like Splyce was on the back foot with the way how Divios was getting ganked, TheBest was getting bullied by Paul, CycloneSpin was caught in a 1v2, but after that questionable Metyankey NeiruMah defense on the tier 1 tower, it's all been Splyce.
Definitely an issue as well with Trifecta's comp here is the lack of CC, hard CC, to break things like Magi's as well, which is going to be an important factor. NeiruMah just uses silence there, which will remove the Magi's from Aror for the time being. But Splyce happy to group up. They're kind of playing around the World Weaver into Cyno more than anything else.
It's just a game of chicken. Who from Trifecta is willing to absorb that hit? Obviously, you got to protect your backline, so Paul and Metyankey need to find one of these frontliners to buffer for them.
Agni and Metyankey at the top. Sorry, Agni and Raijin at the top, I should say. Into the front line goes Scary D, absorbing some of the damage, but gets taunted, knocked up, and then bursted down.
Wow.
Leaps away, the dot's ticking, but he won't be enough to kill him. Aror is trapped.
He can't get out. The sleepy time passive being used. As Divios is also retreating from the horse. Paul credited with that kill. Still running away is Splyce. They have the Fire Giant regen, they have the Guan Yu sustain, but without a single Phoenix to their name, this push has been a failure.
It has, and I've got to give some credit to Trifecta's defense there, because that ring placement from Scary D, intentional or not, divided Splyce onto the Phoenix where they couldn't escape.
And the thing was, Aror using his Phantom in the earlier engagement, saving Divios just from the damage of Metyankey, prevents himself from getting away. CycloneSpin obviously having it still, but he's not going to put himself out of position to save his support player like that, because
What is this?
that's going to put CycloneSpin in a sticky spot.
This is a cheeky red buff bait, potentially. They were doing the red buff for a moment, but I think Best might have smelled that out because he knows the red buff's available. Trifecta just barreled down towards mid. We're hanging around the jungle here, and I like this call, totally. Try and catch someone rotating through the jungle in the wilderness, thinking they're safe, and pick them off early.
There's not much else to do. Gold Fury just now respawning. Fire Giant still down. Pyromancer is almost meaningless in gold-wise at the 29-minute mark. So red buff becomes the next best valuable thing. Stripping that away from an Agni that's level 20, about 5 items deep, almost 6 once he sells the Mage's Blessing, is probably the best tactic that Trifecta can do. And anything bonus that they can get, whether it's a kill or defensive relics, now they could be on the aggressive, but going to slow down the pace of Splyce at least.
Well, Fire Giant is still around the waist of 4 members of Splyce, only Aror lost it. So, Splyce going to jump down the left-hand side here, look for the Phoenix, clear out some wards in the jungle to prevent some vision, and look for a final time before they lose this Fire Giant and trying to get one of these Phoenixes.
Still having about a minute and 5 seconds. They're grouped up as 5. They have a mini wave right beside them as CycloneSpin charging the World Weaver. Watch for Metyankey.
Metyankey took a lot of damage there and actually had to birth both his relics to get away, but now he's not available to turn this around with his ultimate. Aror trapped inside the ring along with a couple of members, but the Phantom comes into play. Divios and Cyno walk away. Heals come out.
Oh, Aror and CycloneSpin actually using their Phantom.
Yeah,
so
same
then
time.
This next Odin cage, even more valuable from Scary D, that has some cooldown reduction, Breastplate of Valor, and the Spirit's Robe, totaling 30%, but that's not going to deter Splyce with all the sustain.
Blinking from Cyno goes on Metyankey, who doesn't have his beads, and straight after the knock-up, the bombs rain down, and that was the end of Metyankey. Divios will be eliminated as he tries to jump on his horse, but the Phoenix has also gone down.
Scary D going to jump away, so it's a 4-on-4 engagement. Trading a frontliner for a back line hyper carry mage.
Yes,
Favors
please.
out Splyce, absolutely. Getting the Phoenix, so getting the lane pressure with the fire minions.
And now with that, they'll walk back into the jungle of Splyce, realizing they can't do much without the Divios, so Gold Fury, red buff, and answer back to the red they lost moments ago. Knock CycloneSpin. I'm surprised Best didn't get that. I guess Cyclone didn't realize he had purple first.
That's probably what the case was, but the Best gonna try to make things happen once his own red buff respawns, doing a good job with his positioning for that last encounter, getting the real Agni bomb stunts. The tactics from CycloneSpin's Neith has been working out.
It has.
Being able to force the beads early from Metyankey, allowing the blink second attempt play from Cyno.
And that's where the additional threat was, because we were like, well, how does this work? You know, it's only Cyno, it's really telegraphed. But now the World Weavers, I mean, you can only do this for one game, I feel, totally, before it doesn't work again. Because you're like, oh, they're going to do this with Neith, so all we're going to do is body block the Neith one, and then your ganks are kind of failed.
The problem is the way Season 5 kind of separated some of the positioning from Phoenix is a lot of these mid-mages will try to hide around that wall in the corner. So that makes it a lot easier of a target for the Neith World Weaver.
That's a good point.
That means Trifecta needs to maybe have somebody in front of Metyankey if he's going to try that play again, or they're not going to want to be that far pushed up, so can't even use that little wall for the defense.
Sneaky Pyro, and, well, it's not going to be a sneaky Fire Giant because all of Splyce are here.
Wow.
They're committing to this heavily. They're using the silence.
They
Trifecta, get the Fire Giant, but at what cost? Paul is nearly dead. Cyno's going to run him down. The Aegis won't buy him enough time. Cyno's going to get his heal off now as Metyankey comes into the fray. Gets some good slows up, but Yankee's under pressure again.
No defensive relics to get away, and the Titan is going to be under attack. It's a 5-on-3. Blinking on in as Cyno yet again with a knockup onto Mass. NeiruMah trying to peel for as long as he can because Scary D is very low.
Scary D is low and has to leap away. Mass now under pressure, being run down by Divios to slow connected. Aror gets credit for the kill. And the Fire Giant, it was risky, but at the same time, I can kind of get it, Tolly. If you can get that Fire Giant and get a couple of members of it, it slows down Splyce.
They needed to use the sprint from NeiruMah and get the heck out of there, but was not able to escape the clutches out of Splyce that's barreling down the mid lane. They don't even want the Phoenix, they want the Titan.
I think they can get the Titan too. Trifecta started this game oh so well, but it's not going to go the way of them. Splyce take game 1 in 33 minutes after a Fire Giant attempt out of Trifecta went wrong.
Unfortunately for Metyankey and co, that Raijin in the Hunter role, not very favorable once it transitioned in the mid to late game. His positioning was getting exploited.
And that was mainly the CycloneSpin. That's kind of what it was, right? Every time Metyankey showed up, they went for him, they focused him out so he didn't have the AoE.
The World Weaver was an issue. The Blink Cynosure knockup into Taunt was an issue as well. He needed to have more separation from his teammates.
I will say, in the laning phase, I don't think the Raijin was bad. I don't think there was anything wrong with the Raijin.
I think that they tried to lean a little bit too heavily on Paul's Ullr, where Paul also makes those same aggressive plays with the Raijin, but his positioning in the late game is more mage-like than it is for Metyankey. I think that that's where they were lacking that kind of mentality.
Who do you guys at home think deserved MVP for that game? So they won that game. I mean, you know who won that game? It was Splyce. But the amazing thing is, who do you think was MVP, Tully?
In that game...
Oh, you don't know?
I don't know. Like, Cyno was blinking in and making the plays. Gotta say Cyno.
All right, I was kind of leaning to Aror. I think he had a pretty good game of the combo. It's not up to us, though. The desk and you guys get to decide.
Thanks, Hindu. We don't really get to decide. That's
We
all
really
Mixer
don't.
chat, but
Yeah.
one day he'll learn how we run things here. Finch on the desk. I've got Ryan, Agro, Bailey with me as well, and a big victory coming out there from Splyce. Maybe not expected, but as we said, these two teams are close.
These two teams are very close, and I think we're already starting to see that camaraderie coming through from Splyce, right? The way that they're playing those team fights. Just take a look at one of those last Phoenix sieges. When
Yes.
CycloneSpin is just waiting. As soon as Metyankey shows up on his vision, immediately fires off that Neith ult. That chases out the beads, and Metyankey goes back to base. Splyce pokes out the Phoenix a little bit. Then on the next wave, once Metyanky's back, Cyno blinks into the back line and eliminates him right away. That's just solid team play from Splyce.
And that's what Splyce, I feel like, does well, right? Is they play well as a unit. We got to see them do that here in this game. But the sieges weren't particularly easy for them here in this game. I think it was their second siege on that right Phoenix where Aror ends up falling. It was a good cage that kind of trapped him back in, and they managed to hold them off for a moment. You think Trifecta are going to come back, but that Fire Giant push at the end, when they go get the Fire Giant, they get it, but they lose that big fight. I mean, what went wrong there?
I think it was that NeiruMah went into the back line there as the Ganesha instead of coming back and helping out Paul. Paul is on the left side of the Fire Giant wall, and Metyankey's on the top side. Instead of going back to either of those, because his carries are so split, I think Neil's idea was to go and stop their back line from killing and getting up towards them. If we can create the wall and keep them out of there, though you don't have to worry about your back line making something happen there or falling to their enemy back line. But Cyno was able to do it by himself, basically. Divios was able to do good work in that instance.
Oh, yeah.
And Neil not being there to peel for his back line, just based on the positioning of where they went and where he went, ended up being a real trouble spot for Trifecta.
Well, you all voted in Mixer Chat, regardless of what Graham thinks, and you all selected your MVP in that game one, and it was Divios from the solo lane that you all selected on the Guan Yu. I think that was the right call, especially on that final Phoenix push that they made. I mean, those Guan Yu heals kept them topped up, so they could repeatedly make those engages like you were talking about and play around their control at that Phoenix.
Yeah, Guan Yu is not a god that's going to be like, oh man, he did all the damage and got all the kills and soloed this person and that person. But every time you play against a Guan Yu, it's like, man, how did we lose? Like, how did we lose?
Why was that
siege?
so hard? That's what you say.
Exactly.
You're like, why was that so difficult? It's because Guan Yu's in there.
Right, and Guan Yu just makes it so much more difficult for you to siege or defend sieges or play around objectives or play the game at all because his heals are so they feel subtle, but they're up so often that he's just constantly topping everybody off, and it ended up being a little bit too much for Trifecta to handle.
And those small touches turned to a big touch there from Divios. But can you talk to a little bit here about Cyno on this Erlang Shen? I mean, it's a pick that he loves to go to, goes to it all the time, but I mean, it keeps working for him. You heard even the casters thinking about maybe he was MVP.
I mean, he's so good at this pick, and how long is it going to take for Cyno to not be the only Erlang Shen player anymore,
Sure.
right? I mean, it seems like he's still the only one who's willing to pick this up, which really surprises me. I think we saw Aninster play it once and just didn't have that same level of success. There's something to be said for just having some connection with playing that god at a high level. The kit speaks to you in a way, and it just lets you make great plays. Normally, Erlang Shen is the I can only deal relevant damage in the early game sort of build, and then I just facilitate in the late. How about this damage on a Metyankey?
Gross. I mean, that's what Cyno does, right? He's able to set it for the rest of the squad. Sometimes you see him using the taunts as sort of reactionary so that he can bait out abilities, but then that's him using the taunt to set up for the rest of the squad, hunting down these carries in the backline like Paul just now, and trying to limit some of what he could do is part of what makes Cyno so strong on this Erlang Shen pick.
It's just it's a versatile selection as well, right? It's that you can use it as the big damage, or as great peel, or as great initiation. It's just a very flexible selection that I think Splyce plays very, very well around. And I was saying during picks and bans, Splyce can be a bit predictable. Who cares? If you're predictable and you continue to play well, you have to, like I was saying,
you gotta beat it. Yes.
Show me you can beat me, and then I'll change. Until then, give Cyno Erlang every game. I've got no problem with it.
Well, let's see if